We are officially on West Coast time, so morning episodes for you guys, and why this road trip is the start of the most important point of the season today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is January 30th, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com. Of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD, as well as on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, the Orlando Magic are still trying to find this very tricky balance. How do we let players recover and give them the opportunity to get better and get into rhythm, while also being in the middle of a tight playoff race? We'll talk about that, plus the importance of this upcoming road trip coming up here in just a moment. First, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. No matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. You can make Locked On Magic an even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic daily newsletter. It's the one-stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Today's episode of Locked On Magic is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The Orlando Magic are not whole yet. When we talked about this after the loss of the Miami Heat, I very much said explicitly they looked tired. Paolo Banchero looked tired after playing nearly 40 minutes. Franz Wagner looked tired after playing 35 minutes. And while they were able to get through and said they felt pretty good in the wake of playing these major minutes, there is still a tax that has to be paid. And again, the proof is in the tape. The shot quality went down, the pace went down, the where their shots finished went down. This Magic team was not able to get across the finish line Monday. They just weren't. But as I said after Monday's game, there was plenty to be hopeful about. There was plenty to sit there and say, I like the direction this thing is going. For 3.5 quarters, the Magic were by far the more dominant team. They were by far the better team than the Miami Heat. Through 3.5 quarters, the Magic had a 123.2 offensive rating. They went on a 14-0 run to take a 14-point lead early in the fourth quarter. The ball was whipping around the perimeter. They were getting stops, getting out in transition, getting guys downhill. It's been a while since we've seen the Magic consistently do this, but to see them put together the game against Detroit, which was a very strong game for their offense, and then put together this game against Miami, it feels like we are coming out of this tunnel. It feels like the Magic are making progress toward being the team we imagine they can be. But then they have the last 6 minutes and the 2 overtime periods, the last 16 minutes of the game. The Magic scored only 60 points per 100 possessions and 18 total points after the 12-point lead with 6:30 to play in the fourth quarter. They were 8 for 27 for the rest of the game. They hung tough. They didn't give up. They didn't completely concede. But very clearly, they didn't have enough to get over the finish line. And again, someone in the comments made this point, and I want to respect this. Miami made the plays to win the game. Duncan Robinson doesn't hit those 2 shots. Doesn't cut the lead immediately from 12 to 6 in about a minute. Very different game. Magic probably win, and the defense has to be better. These losses hurt. And we're going to talk standings in a minute. These losses hurt. But the Magic know they need to continue to give grace. The Magic know there are going to be ups and downs. There are going to be struggles. There are going to be moments where they don't quite have it. Where Paolo looks amazing, like he did Saturday night against the Detroit Pistons. And then there's going to be moments where he looks terrible, like he did in the second half of the game against the Heat. He's had great games. He's had bad games in the 8 games since coming back. It's all a process of recovery. The question for the Magic is, how do they speed it up? How do they put themselves in a better spot, in a position to win more of these games? Because at the end of the day, that's what's missing right now. The Orlando Magic have struggled. There's no getting around it. They're 24-24, sitting in 6th in the East, thanks to a Detroit loss to Cleveland and a Miami loss to Cleveland and a Detroit loss to Indiana. They're not out of the race for making the playoffs by any means. But they are 3 games back of Indiana at 26-20 and 3.5 games back of Milwaukee at 26-19. The Magic are tied with the Heat, who are 23-23 for 6th right now. They're ahead of them because they have more wins, and also because the Magic own the division tiebreaker at the moment at 5-2. Miami's 5-3 in the division. It gets complicated. There are 34 games left. And so while the Magic are right that this period has sort of a training camp vibe as players begin to make their way back from injury, as players begin to kind of find their way and find their rhythm, the Magic have to give them that opportunity to do so. But they also have to start winning. There's a balance here because time isn't running out yet. We're not like in pressure crunch time. Still got the trade deadline next week. We still got the All-Star break. I'll talk about the schedule coming up here in a minute. The Magic know that they have to give their players an opportunity to just find their rhythm and integrate with this group. But they also have to have the urgency to win. If you don't know the numbers here, let me put them out plainly. The Orlando Magic are in a losing rut right now. Just no getting around it, no changing it. They've lost 17 of their last 26 games. That's 9-17 if you don't want to math. They've lost 12 of their last 17. That's 5-12 if you want to do that math. They're 2-8 in their last 10 games and 4-10 in January. This is why the Magic have dropped. They have not won consecutive games since December 23rd, to be exact, more than a month ago. This has been a really difficult stretch. And look, there are plenty of excuses. The injuries have gutted this team of every one of their capable offensive engines. No offense to Cole Anthony, but even he's been hurt. They have had to deal with so much, and naturally everything has slipped. And so now feels like the time that the engine is starting to turn a little bit. And I made this comparison, I believe, after Monday's game. The Magic are at a training camp speed right now. They're trying to get everyone back up to speed, while everyone else, or at least everyone worth their salt, and look, Portland tonight is going to be that way too. Everyone else is at midseason form. Everybody else is in rhythm. Everybody else knows exactly their roles and what they're doing. The Magic have to find it and find it quickly. They're not going to make excuses. They're not going to use the injury excuse. They're not going to use the fatigue excuse. I'm going to say that as a reason. I'm going to say that as a cause, but the Magic understand they gave Monday's game away. They should have won that game. They should have. So now the question becomes, how do the Magic better balance this recovery? Frankly, the problem is they have to just kind of ride it out. They have to hope that Paolo Banchero looks more like himself, and he believes he is. He believes he's getting there. Of course he does, but the numbers ain't pretty either. Banchero, since his return 8 games ago, is averaging 21.1 points per game and shooting 40.4% in 9 games. Again, he's had great games like the 32-point effort against the Pistons, and then he had a 1 for 14, 8-point showing against the Blazers last week. He said he feels good. He says he's still kind of getting himself back. But obviously, we're all antsy for him to get better. We're all antsy for him to look like he did at the beginning of the season, because at the end of the day, this team goes, for whatever other moves or players play, at the end of the day, the Magic go as far as Paolo and Franz take them. And Franz has had great moments since coming back too. He's also looked frustrated and struggled. That's natural. That's what the Magic expected. And the hope is that this all minimizes as we get further along, as they play more, as they break through and play these games. But that's the struggle right now, is the Magic still have to win while they're doing this. And that has been the difficult part over the last 2-3 weeks. The Magic are heading out west, though. And this does not seem like the greatest time for a road trip. Why this road trip and the next 17 games or 16 games might very well be the season. We'll talk about that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at TurboTax. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes were waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now taxes are matching with a TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live, full service, real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. You probably have seen me reference this. You've probably seen other people reference this. The Orlando Magic have the third easiest schedule remaining in the league based on opponent win percentage. Now, that's going to change over the next couple of days because the Magic played the Blazers and Jazz back-to-back. Jazz are last in the Western Conference. Portland is playing a lot better right now. They've got 18 wins. They're still out of the playoff picture. But Orlando still has 2 games against Toronto, 3 games against Washington, 2 games against Charlotte. There are a lot of opportunities to win. So if you listen to me and you say, and you hear me not panicking about where the Magic are in the standings, like, look, is it good that they're 24-24, that they're 500? Absolutely not. This is a better team than that. We know they're a better team than this. We're going to look back at the end of the season and say, yeah, injuries cost them a few wins, but ultimately not the season we imagine. Going from 4, this will be the first time under Jamal Mosley, more likely than not, I don't want to say it for sure, more likely than not, this will be the first season under Jamal Mosley if the Magic get fewer wins than they did last year. Now, ultimately, I think the Magic are more concerned about where they fit into the Eastern Conference picture. I am still very, very confident the Magic are going to finish with at least the 6th seed. And frankly, I am very confident they will be fighting for at least the 5th seed, if not the 4th seed, all the way to the end of the season. I think they will make up that 3-game gap on Indiana. I do. I think there's a big run of wins coming. And frankly, that run starts tonight in Portland. The Orlando Magic have been waiting for this part of the schedule. After this road trip, the Magic play 10 of their next 11 games at the Kia Center. And we know how well they play at the Kia Center. But it's not just that. I believe it's 6 of those 10 games on that homestand are against teams with records below 500. Or teams with records at 500. Essentially games that you would expect this Magic team to win. This road trip starts the most important stretch of the schedule. I include this road trip because having winning road trips is the sign of good teams. The Orlando Magic have an opportunity to have a very successful road trip. They already lost to Miami, which was a winnable game, a game they should have won. Could have very easily been a 4-2 6-game road trip. But let's just focus on the West Coast part of this. Orlando plays Portland and Utah right off the bat. 2 opportunities to gain confidence. 2 opportunities to beat teams that are well below 500. Then they go to Golden State, a team that, yes, they beat Oklahoma City last night, still very dangerous, but a team the Magic are more than capable of beating with the talent they have and with who Golden State's missing right now. Then they go to Sacramento for what could perhaps be De'Aaron Fox's last game in a Kings uniform. In fact, it's not even clear if he would play if they're that close to a deal. Sacramento had a nice run with right after Doug Christie was named the head coach, but now we'll see what they really are. Now we're starting to see what they really are, and they're about a 500 level team. Then the Magic closed their road trip in Denver. Really the only team that the Magic will not be, at least, I don't want to say betting favorites to beat, but the only team that will be a heavy favorite on this road trip. Look, I'm not sitting here counting wins. The Magic lost to the Blazers and lost to the Jazz at home. Both in pretty, I don't want to say embarrassing, but not good fashions. In pretty upsetting and frustrating fashions. The Magic know that they have to be sharper against these teams, and that these teams are capable of beating them. But win those 2 games and steal one from Golden State, Sacramento, and Denver, and you have a winning road trip. You're 3-2 on the West Coast swing, and then you come home. Then you come home to a very favorable homestand. Again, 10 of the next 11 games are at the Kia Center. Home versus San Antonio on February 8th. Home versus Atlanta on February 10th. Home versus Charlotte on February 12th. Coming out, that's going into the All-Star break. 3 teams with losing records. 3 teams you should beat on your home floor. Granted, we know San Antonio has Wembanyama, and they're a lot better. Granted, Atlanta still has Trae Young. They're a lot better. By the time they face Charlotte, LaMelo Ball might be back, but Orlando's had no problems with Charlotte so far this year. Then you come out of the All-Star break at Atlanta on February 20th. Big games against Atlanta. Got to win those division games because of the tiebreaker with Miami. February 21st, home versus Memphis. February 23rd, home versus Washington. February 25th, on TNT, home versus Cleveland. February 27th, home versus Golden State. March 2nd and 4th, home versus Toronto. And then a schedule adjusted game because of the fires and because of the weather events that happened over the last month. March 6th, home versus Chicago. Again, of all those teams on that homestand, at least, only 2 have winning records. Memphis and Golden State. That's it. If the Magic are going to make a move for the 5 seed, if the Magic are going to make a move for the 4 seed, it's going to come in February. February is the most important month of the Magic season. I mentioned this earlier when we talked about what to look forward to in the 3rd quarter of the season. This is it. This 10 and 11 games at the Kia Center is the season. And if the Magic can build momentum, if the Magic can build winning streaks, if the Magic can start stacking wins, beginning with this road trip, again, at Portland, at Utah, at Golden State, at Sacramento, at Denver, a very manageable road trip. If the Magic can start stacking those wins, they give themselves an opportunity to get back into this race. The Magic are not out of it. But that's the trick. That's the key. The Magic have to get back into it. No one's going to hand them these wins. Golden State is a coin flip game. Atlanta is probably, if you look on ESPN's win predictor thing, it's probably going to say Orlando 55% favorite or 60% favorite. It's a coin flip game. These teams are good and capable of beating you. Sacramento, the Magic may not be favored in that game. That is a coin flip game. Miami on Monday, even without Jimmy Butler, was a coin flip game. We expected that game to be tight. We expected that game to be close. The Magic played really well, and then suddenly they didn't. The Magic have to win these games. These are the games the Magic have been losing repeatedly over the last 2 months. And then they started dropping games they shouldn't drop, like the Utah loss, like the Portland loss, and we can like the Toronto loss. We can excuse things because of injuries. We can say injuries make that picture a little muddier and not as clean, but these are wins the Magic have to have. The Magic erased their margin for error. They built a cushion, they spent it. And now they have to win these games. And look, there's going to be losses in the process. Over the next 16 games, if the Magic go 10-6, they'll be back in the race, but they'll separate themselves from like Miami and the play-in, but that's no guarantee that will put them in the race for Indiana and Milwaukee. If the Magic go 11-5, 12-4, then we're back in the race. Then we're back in the game for home court advantage. That's a lot of pressure. And you don't want to look too far ahead. It's still got to be one game at a time. You still got to take care of your business. But this road trip is really important to begin setting the tone and finding that rhythm again. That's the theme of the episode. Find your rhythm. The Magic are hunting for it right now. And if they don't find it now, if they don't find it in February, it's going to be really tough to have a chance to accomplish your goals later. Starts today against Portland. We didn't get a chance to talk about this over the last few days. I want to make sure I get this in. Let's talk about Goga Bitadze's return and how getting healthy has started to slot players into the roles they should be in. Coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Look, attending playoff games is an unforgettable experience that brings fans together. I remember when I was in school, the Magic were making their first big playoff run in 2009. They were in the second round, and I remember I came home for my cousin's bar mitzvahs over the weekend of Game 3 and Game 4. We didn't go to Game 3 because we had bar mitzvah duties to do. But Game 4, I was like, I am staying an extra day. I'm going to fly back to school on Monday. I want to go to Game 4. I want to be at a playoff, at a second-round playoff game. It had been 12 years, 13 years actually, since I had been to a second-round Magic playoff game. I remember walking in and feeling all the intensity and pressure of every possession, and I absolutely loved it. If you want to experience the playoffs, whether it's the NFL, NBA, whatever sport, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to events even easier, even high-demand events like the playoffs. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I've used Game Time for several things just to kind of check ticket prices, to go to events that I wouldn't normally find tickets for, and really it helps so much. The Super Deal was especially impressive, offering the best value for the event. The app's features like seat views before you buy and all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout made the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We haven't had the chance to talk about this, and I really hate burying it in the third segment because I think it's a really important thing and a really important point. Goga Bitadze is back. Goga Bitadze made his return Monday against the Miami Heat, and it was a really solid one. Like, you could definitely tell he was still a little bit rusty and dusty, as he said. You could tell that he was a little bit rusty and still kind of getting his legs back under him after being out for so long. But his presence and his impact were really, really clear. He had 10 points, 9 rebounds, was a plus 21, I believe, when he was on the floor. Very clearly under a minute restriction. Otherwise, he would have finished the game. I think ultimately he will start for this team at some point as he continues to work his way back into them. I don't know if he'll start tonight against Portland, but Goga clearly helps so much. If you listen to the show over the years, we've dealt with a lot of tanking teams. And look, I'm an advocate for players. I believe in players. It's one of the things I've learned covering the team and being close to them, that these players put a lot of effort into what they do. There is a way for every player in this league to be successful. And most players honestly fail because of the situations they're in. Just look at Goga Bitadze. He was in a bad situation in Indiana. Nobody's fault, just was. They wanted him to shoot threes. It really wasn't his game. They changed coaches after his rookie or second season. Coach didn't really understand. Same thing happened with Wendell Carter. It was about finding the right situation for him. Teams are not bad because they don't necessarily have talent. Like, obviously, top-end talent, talent matters. Teams aren't bad because of a lack of talent for the most part. Teams are bad because they ask their talent to do more than they're capable of doing. That's what's happened to the Magic over the last 2 months. They've been asking guys consistently to be more than what they are. Look, Tristan da Silva is a really nice player, and this is a great example of this. Tristan da Silva is a really, really nice player, but asking him to be a playmaking forward, asking him to be a consistent three-point shooter, He's just not ready for that. Maybe he'll get there. Maybe this period has shown him what he needs to work on in the offseason and shown the Magic like, okay, there's something there to develop. We just got to let it develop. But it's important to note, Tristan da Silva goes back to a bench role here for the Magic, and all of a sudden, he looks completely different. All of a sudden, he bangs 5 threes off of corner kickouts. All of a sudden, he's got the confidence to drive because there's more space for him with a weaker defender on him. This is what I mean by putting guys in the right roles. And Goga Bitadze's return seemed to spark a lot of that. Early in the game on Monday, the Magic were stagnant and slow. They looked the same at the beginning of the game as they did at the end. Just very, very deliberate to try and create switches to get that pick and roll switch that they like. Just too deliberate and slow. And then Goga Bitadze checks in. They're down 8 or 9 at that point. Goga Bitadze checks in. He gets the ball at the high post, and players are running off of him. They're getting a lot more dribble handoffs. He's stretching the floor vertically because he's so gifted at alley-oops and kind of tip layups. He's rolling hard to the basket, something Wendell Carter does not do very well, making the defense account for him in the paint and creating lanes for drivers to get downhill. Goga Bitadze seemed to unlock the Magic offense a little bit. And look, Goga's on-off numbers are pretty staggering. The Orlando Magic, quite simply, are a better team with Goga Bitadze on the floor. The Magic are just simply a better team when he plays. I'm going to pull up the stats here in a minute if you give me time to stall for me real fast. But when Goga Bitadze is on the floor this season, the Orlando Magic have a plus 5.3 net rating, 111.1 offense, which is nearly 4 points per 100 possessions better than their average, and a 105.8 defensive rating, which is nearly a little bit less than 3 points per possessions better than their average. The only 2 rotation players that have a better on-off plus-minus are Franz Wagner at plus 6.5, and the guy who's expected to be back tonight for the Magic, Gary Harris, a 107.4 offensive rating, 100 defensive rating when he's on the floor. When Goga Bitadze is off the floor, this is probably the bigger thing. When Goga Bitadze is off the floor, the Magic have a minus 4.5 net rating with a 103.5 offensive rating. Again, Goga's got to work his way back. But him being back in that starting line, for him just being back on the floor with his presence and what he brings, seems to put everybody in the right spots. Seems to get everyone in the right flow. He is selfless. That guy is not interested in scoring. He is a scavenger. He is a rim runner. They're not running plays for him to get shots. All of his baskets are earned. All of his baskets are made by others. But you need players like that. Not everybody gets to be the guy. You need guys that are okay without the ball in their hands or okay helping set others up. And that's what Goga Bitadze does. His presence seemed to get everyone in the right place. Just like having Franz and Paolo back seems to have locked Anthony Black's shooting again. Or seems to have gotten him more space to drive downhill as they reverse it back to him and he attacks a rotating defense. This is what health is supposed to do. This is what a healthy team is supposed to be. It's supposed to get everybody in the roles you imagined. And that was honestly what was so impressive about Monday's game. It's for the first time in a very long time, for 3.5 quarters at least, it looked like Orlando was whole again. Now, we'll wait to see when Jalen Suggs comes back and all that means. We'll wait to see when Goga Bitadze re-enters the starting lineup, which will happen. But the Magic are looking whole again. The Magic are playing a lot better, and that, again, points positively to what is to come for this team. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Find me on Twitter at @PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all filming style podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. On the Patreon page at the moment is a free article. Should be the second one. I'll pin it to the top. A free article talking about what the Magic would give up at the trade deadline, since everyone focuses on what they would receive. I look at the other side of the coin. You can find that on my Patreon page at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done here, be sure to make Locked On Magic an even bigger part of your day with the Locked On Magic daily newsletter, one stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Magic newsletter. Once again, I want to apologize for coming out with a morning episode. I try to avoid these because I know you want me on your drive home, on your drive to work. With the West Coast trip, I'm probably going to be doing some more morning episodes this week. So I do apologize for that. I need sleep. Thank you for letting me sleep. You can always find my work on my Patreon page on Orlando Magic Daily. I'll have an episode to you before noon throughout the West Coast road trip. So you know that. Plus, you'll get the newsletter as well. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. For Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic, this has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.